All right. Hello, everybody. I'm using the mic because we're live streaming. I'm sure you can hear me otherwise, but thank you so much for being here. We're small but mighty. I hope you had time to grab some refreshments, talk to some folks. Atlas School is a tech school. If you don't know about us, we have 20-month programs in machine learning, systems programming, and full stack development. Students come through here to get ready for high-paying tech roles in Tulsa. And we were just deemed a tech hub, so we have 60,000 new jobs, so we were preparing that workforce to go forward. This is such a timely chat because any field that you're in, you're going to have career switches. We've had a busy couple months with lots of speakers. We've talked about data, we've talked about women in the workforce, we've talked about childcare for the workforce and how that's a workforce issue. So today I'm really excited to have Carlisha here to talk about career switching. So without further ado, I'm gonna pass it off.
Awesome. Well, hello and good evening, everyone. I am honored to be here tonight to talk to you about the Pivot Playbook. So, as was mentioned, there is a lot of career shifting right now in the workforce, whether you're in an industry and have been in there for a while, whether you're pivoting from your 9-to-5 into entrepreneurship, whether you're looking for ways to tap into your gift. So today we're going to spend some time talking about how to navigate that shift with both confidence and clarity. So a little bit about me, my background, what brings me into this space. I have multi-sector experience. I've worked in public education, nonprofit. I have sat in seats on boards on the State Department of Education board. I have also ran a collective impact organization working across various sectors. But one thing is true in any of those shifts and pivots that I've made in my career, it was so important for me to first understand what I wanted and how to drive towards those outcomes to make values-aligned decisions in my leadership. And so this right here is the glory, but trust me, we will get into the story in just a second. But before we do that, I want to learn more about you all in the room. And so we're going to do an activity called Four Corners. You will see that there are some signs on the chairs: strongly agree, agree, strongly disagree, and disagree right there. I'm going to share some prompts on the screen, and they're walking through us reflecting on some of our career experiences, our pivots, and where we are now so that we can dig into a deeper conversation about how to move forward with confidence and clarity. All right? I told you guys I was going to tell you the story of the glory, right? So yes, we can talk about the awards and the roles and the various industries, but there was a story to even get there. I remember this picture was taken many years ago. I was sitting at a job, and I said, I'm going to take a picture of myself on this day because I refuse to remain here. I was in a role that somebody told me would be a good fit. It would be a good next step for me. When I tell you the organizational culture was something I didn't want to be a part of, I didn't want to wake up every morning and go to work there. There were so many red flags. But often what kept me in this position, what helped me to make that decision was, number one, listening to what everybody else told me was the great next step for my career. Number two was setting boundaries. I was a yes person. It was, oh, you want me to do that? You know I'm going to do it above and beyond, so you're going to trust me to get it done. Additionally, for me to move forward, I had to believe in my own voice, my own brilliance, to risk and take a bet on myself. That last question about, did you fear that you would lose credibility in your pivot? My career path was by any means, if someone was to look and to say, oh, these were the steps she took, they would say, oh, you skipped about 4 steps in between the classroom to get you to the boardroom, right? They would be like, that's not the path that you were supposed to go on. But it took a position like this to get me to the place of what I'm going to talk to you all about today, for me to be audacious in betting on myself and being able to clearly articulate what I brought to the table. And why I was able to skip levels was because of being able to convey that value for other people to want to bet on me too. So as you get ready to make your move, there's 3 misconceptions that oftentimes keep people stuck. That first one is that I have to be 100% ready before I make a move. I've got to have everything together before I make the leap. And that is just that's not true. That's not the case. and the other one is if I keep doing good work, someone will notice. So it was mentioned earlier, well, once I get in there and once I can show them what I can do, well, a lot of times they're not checking for what you can do because we got our head down, we're focused on doing the work. Well, what happens when they don't notice that? The other one is I can just follow someone else's path and get the same result. Such and such went through this program, or they took this job and then went here. These are 3 misconceptions that oftentimes keep people stuck because number 1 is internal. It's a lack of confidence and belief. It's the spirit of perfectionism, and I'm a recovering perfectionist. The second one is really lacking the concept of understanding why we must be visible. It's not enough just to do the work. It's not enough. We've got to talk about what we do and be able to articulate that value. And then the last one is understanding that your path is unique. You have the opportunity to create that, and we're going to unpack that tonight. So there are these 3 keys to your next level. And I do encourage you, whether you're working on your phone or you get out a piece of paper, you're going to want that because this is more hands-on for what we're going to get into next. The first key is to understand your core values. Absolute baseline of any leader that I work with or support or core to my journey is understanding core values. And I'm not referring to the core values in terms of, what the company values that I work for. But these are your core values. So personally and professionally, what do you value? So I put a list on the board, and I want for you to take a second to choose your top 15 values. You can choose to add words if you'd like of your own, but we're going to take a second to dive in to examine what your values are. Oftentimes people will first ask, well, is this about work? Is it about who I am as a person? We're whole people when we come to work. So choose your top 15 values. I'm going to give you 4 minutes to select your top 15 values. All right, so now that you have gotten your list down to your top 15, I'm going to ask you to take one more step. Narrow that list of 15 down to your top 5. And as you think about your top 5, I also challenge you to think about, well, what does it look like for me to live this out? Because a value of connection can mean different things to Marie versus to Matisse. So as you get down to your top 5, I want for you to also think about, what does it look like for me to live out this value? You think about these values. I want to pose this question for you as you've gotten down to this list of your top 5. Where have you compromised these values before, living them out in your previous roles? And where have roles allowed for you to lean into these values? So the reason why I ask these 2 questions, especially as you're thinking about a pivot and you're thinking about a transition in your next chapter, what I've mentioned to you when we talk about values is that you are a whole person. To find satisfaction, to stay in roles, to examine what is the next best pivot for me, a lot of that is tied to our values. When we can think about experiences or roles that we've been in where we've compromised these values or where we've been able to lean into these values, we can think more about the work environments that we would thrive in, the culture that we want to be a part of, the questions that we should be asking the employer when we're in the interview, because we're also interviewing the company as well. And so these are some questions of reflection that I oftentimes come back to even as an entrepreneur. How am I living my values? Where am I compromising my values when I look at my calendar, when I look at where I'm spending my time, when I look at the choices that I'm making? So values aligned decision making is really at the core to go into your next level with clarity and confidence. Now, number 2 is that you're willing to ask yourself the tough questions to know what you really want. I coach a lot of clients on career pivots or founders who are launching businesses, and they have big ideas, or they say, hey, this is the job I want to go after, but we did not pause to ask these tough questions. And I'm going to give you 4 of them tonight. I encourage you, whether you take a picture of these questions on the screen, I'm going to walk through each of them. But these are the top 4 questions that I like to dig into that allow for us to do the interpersonal work that's necessary to prepare for our shift. The first one is, what are the external factors that contributed to your dissatisfaction? So if you're saying, hey, I need something new, like what is happening externally within that company or within the business or within your life? Like, these are factors that are not about you. It could be the culture here, the boss. It could be the leadership. It could be I'm not getting promoted, right? Asking yourself to really identify what has led to my dissatisfaction in this organization, to be ready to pivot, to be ready to leave. The second one is, what are the internal shifts that have caused your desire to move, right? So this is where we're thinking about, hey, I'm burnt out. I'm saying yes a lot. I'm not looking into my boundaries and holding that line. I've decided that this is not purposeful for me anymore. I want to do something that lights me up. I'm tired of doing the same old thing. But we've got to ask ourselves, both the external and the internal, to really identify what is causing us to make this pivot, so that we don't get caught up in the shiny job opportunity or the next step. Now, number 3, what do I need in a career, a lifestyle, and a work environment? Again, we can get caught up and end up right back where we left because we wanted to just move so quickly. But really identifying, what are those things that you need? How does this company, how does the business that you're building, how does this tie to the vision that I have and the values for the life that I want to lead? These are your non-negotiables that are rooted in your values. And now this fourth question is, what are the ideal nice to haves? Now, we know every job is not going to have the sparkly bow on top, but if you can understand, what are these aspects that inspire you? Where do you desire to grow and go within a company? Are those opportunities within that organization available to you? Is it a nice to have a company who's investing in your leadership development? Is it a nice to have to be able to have career paths that are already lined out and you know the next steps? What are the nice to haves that inspire you to continue to go and grow? And so these 4 questions are critical before making a leap. Before you even pull up LinkedIn and start going to the search bar, before you enroll in the next certification, really understand where you want to go and grow so that you can be intentional about building your career path. Now, when you're looking to find alignment, there is perceived value and perceived alignment, and then there's true alignment. So one looks right and the other one feels right. So looks right is the role or the title sounds impressive. A lot of us will stop at, oh, director, like, I like that. That sounds good. But true alignment is when that role matches your long-term vision. As a leader, one of the questions that I always ask folks on my team, whether I'm doing skip level meetings, especially if I'm in first interviews, is, what's your long-term vision for your career? And as a boss and as a leader, I know I might only have people for a little bit amount of time, but I need to make their work relevant to where they want to go and grow. How am I stretching you and building that pathway for you? But also, how are you able to examine that opportunity and know, while this might be a stepping stone to get me to somewhere else, at least you are clear on what that pathway is for you. Perceived value is, everyone says I should take it. That job that I showed you where I was sitting there looking miserable, everybody told me I should take it. They told me that was the best next step for me. We even heard, you were in your job for 6 months? And you were like, they all told me this was gonna be good, but I left within 6 months. But true alignment is, this role connects with who I'm becoming. So every job is not gonna be perfect. And I know that there's a lot of privilege in saying, oh, find the right fit job. Some of us, you need employment. You're like, I need a paycheck. But I also believe when you can take that opportunity when you're seeking employment to really know what you want, you're able to market yourself better and find alignment in your roles. So prestige and pay, which pay can still be true alignment. I struggled putting it in that category only. But also when you can find a role that brings you peace and purpose. Pressure or people pleasing, moving to alignment with lifestyle and vision. So as you're creating this long-term plan and you are possibly coming to a program like Atlas and saying, hey, I'm going to upskill. I want to enhance my opportunities, and you're laying out that vision for what these next steps are you also being intentional about researching and thinking about these are the type of companies that I want to work with? This is the networking that I'm going to be really intentional about while I'm here. Whoa, I did not mean to do that. All right, number 3, our third key is to become visible. Whether you are looking for a job right now, whether you are an entrepreneur, whether you're in a program at Atlas, it is so important to become visible. A lot of us believe, and I had posted something on social media the other day, that visibility is vanity. So if I'm posting about what I'm doing, people might think that I'm making this about me, or I'm always talking about myself, but it's honestly strategy. It is a strategy for you to be able to attract the opportunities that you desire. It's a strategy when you're able to tell the story and the glory, right? To allow for people to come on this journey with you as you grow and develop, and they get to see more of that personality. They get to see more of the skills behind just the hard work. But you are a walking billboard for your next level and your next step. And it starts right now. So when we're thinking about making a pivot and making a shift, it's critical that you think about your transferable skills. A lot of times people stay stuck and say, oh, I was a teacher, I'm starting all the way over, and I'm about to go into tech. I don't know how any of this is going to translate. Do I even put that on my resume? You absolutely put it on your resume, and you think about the ways that you solve complex challenges, that you broke down data and analyzed that for student outcomes, the ways that you had relationship building. Just because you're working in a new industry does not mean that your people skills are going to waste. But you have to think about, what can I transfer from where I was to get me to where I'm going? And so on this list, these are some key buckets that are important in most roles, most jobs that you're going to go to. So thinking about, hey, what did I gain from my last place? That falls into communication, operational excellence, creative direction, program and project management. We have to be able to change the way that we talk about the work that we've done to make it relatable to that next level. The other piece is designing the lane for your thought leadership. And when I talk about thought leadership, this means the topics that you want to be known for. So if I am coming into this space, I have a lot of passion and expertise for me personally around public speaking, personal branding, and leadership development. You will find me on social, on LinkedIn, on Instagram. I'm constantly talking about these themes. This is my lane of thought leadership. I have met many others who I know, there's folks in here with education background and experience. How are you looking at the problems that you're uniquely positioned to solve, the themes that people oftentimes come to you for guidance on, and lastly, it's a message that you can deliver based on your lived experience, based on your expertise, but leaning in and trusting the first point that I made, that you don't have to be 100% ready to lean in. Oftentimes, folks discount your lived experience as expertise. There are things that you have seen on your journey that other people have not, and those lessons are valid. And so really thinking about your thought leadership as you're branding yourself, as you're preparing to pivot, that is something that will guide you and walk with you no matter the position that you're in. So recapping these 3 keys before I open it up for some questions is, number 1, to understand and make decisions with your core values. Know what they are, keep them at the forefront. These are what you use at the baseline to make these decisions. Number 2, ask yourself the tough questions and answer these questions before you make the leap. And lastly, make yourself visible and build a brand. So I would love to leave some time for you all to ask questions, especially if you want them to relate back to particularly what you're doing and leading and building. I would love to spend the last 10 minutes supporting you through that.